Welcome to the Content Podcast, conversations with Silicon Valley's creatives. I'm Daniel Garcia, your host and the cultivator of Content Magazine, published by SV Creates.
This is Demone.
Today we talk with Demone Carter. He's a hip-hop artist, creative catalyst, and a non-profit professional. Also co-founder of the hip-hop culture podcast, Bod Rap Pod. Hey Demone, how you doing? This is Daniel.
Daniel, doing well, man. Hanging in there. All things considered, doing well.
Yeah, it's good to talk to you. I haven't seen you in a while, of course, because of this shelter in place. How are you and your family and everybody holding up during the time?
Yeah, incredibly fortunate. My family is in good health, and we're riding it out, taking the precautions and trying to stay healthy and sane. I actually did see you. You did not see me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I live at San Pedro now, and I saw you riding your bike through the farmer's market.
Oh,
a couple
okay.
Fridays ago.
All right. Yeah, I get out a little bit every once in a while.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Sure.
What for you? What is during this time? What is kind of like? What have you kind of learned about yourself from this shelter in place and the COVID thing? What would you say?
What have I learned about myself?
Yeah.
I took a lot of things for granted, like the movies and theater and gathering with friends in person, and all those things that once they're not there, you're like, oh wow, travel,
right?
Like,
yeah.
Just all the things, for the most part, first world problems. But, I realized that the way that I show up in San Jose really was not dependent, but it really involved a lot of interaction and going places and seeing people and meeting with them. And it was very central to how I did my work. And so what I've learned is, you got to roll with things. You have to adapt. You've got to pivot. Because what else are you going to do? Yeah.
So does that mean you've kind of pivoted and now you're doing tons of Zoom calls every day, or?
So much Zoom, so much Zoom. I appreciate the phone call and that I'm not just staring into the interface yet again. I mean, my day gig as director of community engagement for Sacred Heart Community Service, Zoom is the way that we interact. First and foremost. So I'm spending a lot of time in that space. My podcast is now held in Zoom form, which on the main is good, but then you're kind of just adding layers, right? So that's another layer of calls. And then a lot of the gigs that I had that were like in-person gigs that got canceled, some of that is coming back in a virtual realm, which is like, it's cool. But then again, you put all that together and that's like 5-6 hours a day.
It's tiring.
Looking at the computer. It gets old.
Yeah. So, hey, I was kind of curious. I mean, how did you, I saw somewhere, I think maybe it's your Instagram handle or something like that. And it says, it's something like hip hop saved my life or somewhere like that.
Sure.
So obviously, and especially with the podcast that you do, and we'll talk about that in a second, but so obviously music and hip hop has been a big part of your life. So how did you get started in that? Tell about your rapper side of you. And then I'm very curious then of how that transitioned to be working kind of in the nonprofit arts and culture space. So first tell us a little about your hip hop experience, DJ.
Yeah. So I'm a lifelong San Josean, first off. And for me, it started in middle school with taping episodes of Yo MTV Raps. People of a certain age will remember when MTV actually showed videos. And when they showed rap videos, that was really kind of the seed for me getting really deeply involved in rap music and hip hop culture, because at that time in San Jose, the radio wasn't really playing a whole lot of rap from the East Coast. I mean, we had some things out here, but I really gravitated towards rappers from New York, like KRS-One, Public Enemy, Rakim, And they were really foundational for me and my identity as a black person, as a young black man trying to find his way.
Yeah.
So I started off emulating them, watching a ton of rap videos. Then KSJS had a couple of college radio programs. I remember Grand Diva had a program back in the 90s that I would record on tape.
Yeah.
And this was streaming before streaming, right? So
right, yeah.
I'm just recording all these songs, and it's that whole thing of like you imitate it until eventually you just start doing your own stuff. And so in 1995, I was 1 year removed from high school. Myself, acclaimed producer Trax a Million, and my late partner Jesse Jones, we formed a rap group called Lackadaisical, and we pressed up our own tapes.
Yeah.
We did a show at Cactus Club.
Right
Again, these are just super dated references, but if you're from San Jose, you know what's up. So we performed at Cactus Club. We opened for a group called Mystic Journeyman, who went on to start Living Legends and had kind of an underground acclaim. Yeah. But we opened for them, and we had 100 tapes with us that night, and the show went really well, and we sold all the tapes that night, like on site.
Yeah,
and so large, man. I felt like
you made it.
Yeah, seriously. I was like, well, this is what I want to do with my life. Like, I want to do this. I want to perform. I want to record music. I want to sell the music. And so as many, as a great many people do. And so I tried my hand at that for several years. The underground rap hustle is
tour around a little bit? I mean, like national touring and those kind of things, trying to get
a little bit. Yeah, nothing that is like super exciting or really fun recollections even. It was like,
more
a show here, a show there is more painful. Like we went to Seattle a couple times. We did some stuff in Southern California, but we never could really get like traction with that for various reasons. And so I was kind of transitioning into how I got into nonprofit.
Yeah.
I was at San Jose State, going to state, and had just dropped out of state actually because I wanted to be a rapper. And you guys should thank my mother for not killing me on site when I dropped that news on her.
On
one day in '96. Oh, she's just like, oh my God, are you kidding me? So I kind of kept trying to do the underground hustle, kicked around, had various day jobs, was working in like banking and call centers and the whole bit. And then my ex-wife told me like, hey, you don't like your job. You should figure out how to do something that is more who you are. You're not into banking. You're like, you're this artist. You should figure out how to get paid to do things that are in that realm.
Yeah.
And I had really kind of fixated on, well, I'm going to be a rapper and I'm going to sell my music. But when that wasn't working, I had to pivot to something else. So long story short, I quit my job with a vague idea of starting a quote unquote hip hop program that would teach kids how to breakdance, rap, do graffiti, DJ in the after school context.
Yeah.
Super vague idea, but I approached a friend of my brother who was working at a nonprofit called Unity Care. A shout out to Gilbert Scheidez, one of my friends and mentors. And he was like, this was one day in 2004. He was like, sure, let's do it. Let's go out to a campus. So I called some friends of mine. DJ Cutso was one of those people.
Cool.
And I said, hey, who wants to go to a middle school and teach some classes? Had developed no curriculum, had no idea how you do this. And a middle school principal at Matson Middle School, Glenn Vanderzee, was kind enough for whatever reason to give us a contract to work with kids there.
Awesome.
And that was the birth of the Hip Hop 360 program.
Yeah, cool.
Which was my kind of entree into nonprofit.
So so that's interesting. Just sorry to interrupt, but so you weren't already kind of working in nonprofits when that started. So actually that was your launch. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize that. So that's pretty cool actually.
Yeah. A long time ago. So I first cut my teeth at Unity Care, which is a foster care agency, doing programs there, doing after school programs in the East Side, and worked there for about 7 years. And then, economic downturn, things being what they were,
Yeah.
we were essentially laid off. And we being Bobby V and I. I'm sorry,
Okay.
I should
Yeah.
say that
All
off
right.
top. Bobby V being a co-founder, and so we're like, hey, let's just start our own program,
Right.
and we're going to sidestep some of the administrative hurdles of trying to be a nonprofit. We're like, we'll just run it as a business. We'll be a social entrepreneurship venture. So we called it Future Arts Now, and basically kind of just picked up a lot of our old clients.
Yeah.
But expanded the offerings. We started doing photography and poetry and jewelry making, and just the
Yeah.
program being about creative expression.
Yeah.
During that time, in the same time of starting Future Arts Now, I got into a arts leadership group, arts leadership development program called MOLLI, Multicultural Arts Leadership Institute,
Yeah.
through an invite from Tamara Alvarado. And I didn't really know what I was getting into, but
Took over your life.
she seemed to know what was up and that I should be in that room. And so I took her advice. I was a part of the Molly Class 4 cohort, and then after that, when the School of Arts and Culture was being founded, Tamara kind of tapped me to help her run the Molly program.
Yeah.
And then that really became kind of like my life. That was my introduction into nonprofit arts, which I didn't know was a thing.
Yeah, and so then you were working at the School of Arts and Culture, Mexican Heritage Plaza, for how many years did you do that?
So I joined Molly in 2011. I was kind of just a part-time contractor 2012. So like 2013 through 2019. So about, let's call it 6.5 or so years.
Yeah.
But it's parallel with when the school was founded. So I feel really blessed to have been part of the initial group that kind of reclaimed the school and turned it into what it is now.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then Future Arts Now, that's still going on, right? Isn't it at Edenvale? Or,
Yeah. I mean, COVID has kind of put a crimp in things.
Totally.
Bobby V is, I kind of handed over the reins to him. But yeah, it still exists in the sense that Future Arts Now was always about giving youth and young adults a place to be.
Yeah.
Right. So we were lucky enough to partner with the city to do weekly open dance sessions at Edenville Community Center as well as Alum Rock Youth Center. And it's really was just like a community building space, people coming together, working on their craft and, safe, well lighted. So hopefully when you can do things like that again, Future Arts will be back up and running.
Yeah, that's cool. And so then now you just transitioned to work at Sacred Heart, right?
Yes.
And so then what's your role there? Well, you were doing program management at School of Arts and Culture, and then now
correct.
We'll get this kind of stuff out of the way, and then we'll talk about your podcast. So then,
sure. No, it's
got to give context for people, right? Yeah,
absolutely. The mini hats. So I am the director of community engagement for Sacred Heart Community Service. I went there in December of 2019. My role at Sacred Heart is kind of twofold. One is I oversee the volunteer experience. Last year, Sacred Heart engaged 9,000 volunteers.
Wow.
In work to alleviate poverty. That's our mission at Sacred Heart, is a community united to end poverty.
Yeah.
So I oversee the volunteer experience as well as do some communications work and a little bit of fundraising.
Yeah. So then do you think, it seems like when I talk to you and everything that you do is very much kind of like community engagement. And I would say, I wouldn't say that I wouldn't say an activist, but I would say cultural shaping. You know what I mean? Because I don't know, maybe in my head, there's a little bit of difference, but whatever. But so how did that come about? Was that always, because do you think that was even part of your kind of like musical experience? You were trying to use your raps and your rhymes to change people's minds, right? So
sure.
How did that come? How is that part of you?
Yeah, how's that part of the story? Well, a funny thing happens, I feel like sometimes you seek out opportunities, and then sometimes opportunities seek you out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
And so through I was a part of American Leadership Forum,
Yeah.
class 36 or so, of which also Lydia Gould Bustamante is part of that class. She's associate director at Sacred Heart, and somebody you should talk to. Super interesting. She's been in content.
Yeah.
So she's a good friend of mine and somebody who I highly respect, and had been trying to recruit me for a couple years to come join Sacred Heart. I wasn't quite ready to jump back into social services. I do think of myself as a creative catalyst and a person who organizes around the arts.
Yeah. Yeah.
But increasingly, my work through Molly had started to become about the push for equity in the arts,
Yeah.
and making sure that people of color are at decision-making tables when it came to the arts.
Yeah.
And the deeper I got into that conversation and that advocacy, and I would call myself an advocate rather than an activist.
Sure.
The deeper I got into that work, the more I just wanted to have conversations about equity in general.
Yeah.
Like it's not, for me, it's not about how do we get artist housing? It's like, how do we get affordable housing?
Right.
Like, period.
Totally.
And so I was kind of inching towards wanting to do more work that I don't want to say had a broader impact, because the arts have a super broad impact. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I wanted to have an opportunity and a challenge to kind of apply everything that I've learned through being an entrepreneur, through being a nonprofit administrator, through doing leadership development, and see if I could make an impact in my city. I'm a lifelong San Josean. Yeah. Sacred Heart is a 57-year-old organization with an incredible reputation for helping people in the community. Yeah. So Lydia and also our executive director, Poncho, made a great kind of recruiting pitch. I didn't play college. I didn't play college sports, but it kind of felt like, when the coach comes and sits you down, like, hey, son, we want you to come here and do big things for us. And so, yeah, that's how I ended up at Sacred Heart. And, I worked there for a couple months, and then boom, pandemic.
Yeah. Right. Well, it's interesting because you're talking about kind of being focused on the arts, but then I think once you start getting involved, you start to begin to see culture as a holistic, puzzle that needs to be kind of like underneath, from housing, food to transportation to, everything kind of starts to tie in together. Right.
Absolutely.
So now you have this side project that I want to talk about. You and David Ma and Nate LeBlanc and Dad Bod Rap Pod, and you guys have been doing it for now like 2 years. Even is it? Well,
yeah.
Like 100.
We're pushing 136. We just recorded episode 136. In December, it'll be 3 years.
Wow.
Of doing this podcast.
That's crazy.
And it's called Dad Bod Rap Pod. It's a podcast about rap. Yeah. From the perspective of three kind of like 40-ish. I don't think Dave's 40, but 40-ish something dudes who grew up with the culture and are trying to kind of make sense of what's our place in it now, and engaging with new artists and having reverence and respect for old music and dissecting that. Yeah. So that's been a really amazing and fun. It's a side project, but I feel like
it's a passion.
It's a passion, and it involves the only thing that I know about really well. Like arcane rap knowledge is like the only thing that I'm like, I have a PhD in that. I mean, no school has given me a PhD, but I feel that level of knowledge about rap music.
Well, that's that you listen to it, and it is, it sounds like, it is like an academic lesson in a way.
A little bit.
Of like the history and the nuances of rap. And like, you from the get-go, you guys are dropping names and albums. And then when you talk to your different artists, you guys go off on these tangents of these nuances that I'm like, whoa. And it kind of reminds me of like, it's almost like the KNBR, like you listen to the sports talk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's rap talk.
Right, exactly. And I'm like, wow, this is crazy. The knowledge that you guys have. And it's peeling back these layers like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know this was going on. I have to admit, I don't know anything about. Well, I don't know anything about a lot of things. So, yeah, that's cool. So then, and you guys just got picked up by
by
uh,
Stony Island Pods is a new podcast network that's spearheaded by Open Mike Eagle, who's a very prominent rap artist and comedian. He had a show on Comedy Central for a little bit,
cool.
and is actually going on tour with Hannibal Buress in a couple weeks.
So that gives you distribution and visibility, I guess, that then can turn into monetizing, or
hopefully, man. We haven't quite got over the hill of monetization, but yes, Stony Island is a new venture. More eyeballs, more ears, and it's the affiliation. So Stony Island is our podcast, Open Mike Eagle's podcast, which is called What Had Happened Was, and also a podcast called Super Duty Tough Work, which is Blueprint and Illogic. And these are all, if you're into the kind of rap that we're into, these are all names you're familiar with and names that are trusted. And so it's a platform, but it's also kind of association. And for us, as just three dudes from San Jose, California, it's just been incredible. We get to talk to all of our heroes, essentially. Like we had MC8 on our most recent podcast that comes out this Thursday, or whenever time you hear this. And this is literally a rapper who I was idolizing in middle school.
That's awesome.
Right? And listening to him tell stories about working with Dr. Dre and being in Grand Theft Auto and being in the movie Boys in the Hood and Menace to Society. And it's been such a cool experience to talk to some of the people who we've idolized, and also then talk to a lot of like new artists, right? Because there's an age divide in rap, and part of our name kind of leans into that kind of tongue in cheek of this idea of like dad bod. Oftentimes cats get my age and they're just like, all the new music sucks. It's all mumble rap. It's all this, it's all that. But part of the premise of our program is helping our contemporaries, guys our age or women our age, recommending like, here's some new stuff that's actually really cool. And that's also a really fun part of it is I am now more into it than I've been in probably a decade. Because now I'm learning, I'm meeting new people, I'm learning about new types of music. So as you can tell by my rant, I'm very excited about our podcast. Every Thursday, we drop a new episode on Stony Island Pods. Check us out wherever you get your podcast content.
Yeah, we'll have the links in there and everything. So who have you interviewed and done on the podcast that you were like the most like
proud of,
excited about, or
we interviewed the Last Poets about 50 or so episodes ago. We interviewed two of the founding members from the Last Poets, which is absolutely amazing. Again, these are like heroes, and the Last Poets are literally the progenitors of rap. They are the first people to put spoken word poetry syncopated to rhythm. Cool. And to hear them talk about how that came about, in their life trajectory and how they feel about rap, that was a huge one. As I just mentioned, MC8 was a huge one. We recently interviewed DJ Shadow, who's also somebody who's just a huge figure in music. And he kind of peeled back the curtain on his beginnings and such. So that was awesome. We've talked to Roxanne Shante. We've talked to Prince Marky D from the Fat Boys. Just again, anybody who was in Word Up magazine that I get to end up interviewing as a grown person. I get really excited about that. And most of the artists we talk to are just super engaging and wanting to talk about their stories. And so 135 episodes is a lot of episodes.
Yeah, that is, man.
The other day, we've basically been talking about rap for damn near 500 hours in the last 2.5 years. So it's been a fun ride, and I'm super proud of what we've been able to accomplish and excited for the future.
That's cool. Yeah. So what would you say, what have you learned from episode 1 to episode 135? What do you think you've kind of like taken away in the whole production aspect?
Shout out to Nate LeBlanc, who is our like real producer. So like he does all the technical work.
Yeah.
in terms of like recording. And so his learning curve, I think, has been the steepest from when we started with like, ramshackle equipment to like
Right.
where we
Yeah.
are now. So, and he's done amazing things in that realm. I think for me personally, I was thinking about this about 30 or so episodes ago. One day I was at work and I'm just kind of talking because now everything's in Zoom, right? So I'm just talking
Yeah.
and I go, you know what? I'm kind of better at talking. I've gotten better at talking and holding people's attention
Yeah.
in this little weird space that we're in. And so I
Yeah.
feel like the podcast has taught me how to be a better active listener, because that's going to make for a good
Oh, yeah.
interview, right? When you're
Totally.
like listening and paying attention.
Yeah.
And then it's also taught me about how to riff, if that makes any sense, like
Sure,
how
yeah.
to ad lib, but keep it entertaining and keep it coherent. I've never thought of myself as a great storyteller. I know some great storytellers, and I don't feel like I'm one,
Yeah.
but I do feel like I'm really getting better at being able to have like a free flowing banter that also makes sense and could be listenable
Yeah.
to people. So that's been my primary takeaway. But as an MC and as a host, it's like, it's all just talking. I've gotten better at talking, if that's possible.
Yeah. And listening too, right? That's yeah. Yeah,
for sure.
That's
For
good.
sure.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, congratulations on the success of that and the new thing, and hopefully, all three of you guys will quit your day jobs and do it full time, and travel the world. But yeah, I wanted to talk to you too, just about, the arts in San Jose and culture, and I know even back, a couple of years ago, you were talking, and I think that you even did a talk like at Bellarmine or something like that, about like diversity and equity and all that kind of stuff. So when it comes to San Jose, working in this space, what do you see? How would you describe San Jose's atmosphere, culture of diversity, equity, inclusion in the world of arts?
I would say that San Jose has so much artistic and ethnic diversity. So we are a city that does not have any huge monolithic kind of arts institutions in the way that a San Francisco or an LA does.
Yeah.
We have a small ballet, or we don't have a ballet, excuse me. We have a small opera. We have a small symphony, but none of those are kind of like the main event here.
Yeah.
And so what we have is a bunch of small groups, organizations, everything from Aztec dance to, Japanese American taiko drumming, to DJ collectives, to cumbia cults, to all kinds of things. And nothing predominates. Okay. There's no one thing that that kind of outshines everything else. And I think what that gives us is this really rich kind of very diverse, interesting culture that is always mutating and growing in 1,000 different directions. I'll give it a tangible example of that. In the time of COVID, there's been a visual, visceral uptick in lowrider culture. And cruising that's returned in a really strong way, as well as like bike culture, like kids riding fixed gears and things like that, like a different kind of bike culture, not necessarily like a Tour de France style biking, but kids riding in the streets and doing wheelies and such. And so I think it's a great example of because there's not one scene or one thing that predominates, people really have these like really cool micro scenes, and they're very ethnically diverse. Now, on the other hand, through my work with Molly and kind of engagement, agitation with the city, Team San Jose specifically, there is a gap in understanding about the scenes that I've just explained, and how the official arms of the city, how we market ourselves. And so that's advocacy work that I've been a part of for the last, when was the Super Bowl, 2016? For about the last four years almost. And so that's something that's really important to me, that the authenticity of who we are as a city, both ethnically and artistically, is shown on on the largest stage. When the Super Bowl came to town, our local tourism board, Team San Jose, put out a video of instructing people that they could go to Santa Cruz,
right, yeah,
or that they could go to Napa.
yeah,
And we kind of, we engaged them in a conversation about that. Like, well, hey, there's all these incredible, vibrant things going on here.
yeah,
You need to shine a spotlight on, which to their credit, they did.
yeah,
And so that to me is something that we're still working on. Although I do see in this new time of the pandemic where you have the techie culture has been depressed in the sense that folks aren't coming to work, and they're not going to for a long time.
Yeah,
they're not coming back, right? And so downtown, especially the downtown core, is, I'm seeing it because I live here now. I think you're seeing more people who live here and want to use downtown as a way to say, hey, look at me, look at what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Whether that be the great mural stuff that Local Color did with storefronts, whether that be the lowrider kind of culture that I've just mentioned. I live on Santa Clara Street. All weekend I saw lowriders in a way I haven't seen in 20 plus years.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So I do think it's an opportunity, and even though I'm working in social services, I still have a foot in conversations about the cultural and vitality and life of San Jose. And also, can I plug something? Can I plug something new?
Of course.
I was recently named a creative license ambassador.
All right.
By the city of San Jose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So 2021, I'll be doing a series of podcast and Instagram live engagements, basically trying to inspire San Joseans to get in touch with their creativity.
Yeah.
And cool. So I still have my foot in arts and culture, and specifically for this town. Again, I'm 43 years old, soon to be 44. I don't run into too many people that were like, I'm born and raised in San Jose, and never really left. I had 18 months in Cupertino. That's as far as I went. Which could be viewed as like, oh, you haven't lived. But on one hand, I do feel like I'm
all
connected
the same
to
out
the
there
city.
anyways.
Is it?
Yeah. No matter where you go, it's the same sun, it's the same moon,
Same virus right now. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We're all equal.
Hey, so then I want to talk to you too, just about, you're a person of color in the arts in San Jose. What's going on with you, with your heart, your mind, and just thinking in terms of advocacy with what's going on with Black Lives Matter, the dialogue, all that kind of stuff. What's your thoughts on that?
First, I just want to say it's, again, as a lifelong San Josean, to see what happened in the wake of George Floyd's murder here specifically was I haven't seen that type of activism, that type of people being out in the streets. I can say I've never seen that before, and so and I would say on the main, it's a younger kind of organizing set that was out there, and so
and a real diverse, organized set, that's passionate and
super diverse and super kind of connected to a national struggle, right? And so I was heartened by it all. I'll be honest with you, I was not a part of any of that. I kind of, for reasons of both COVID and also I've never been into street protest. I do try to show up in other ways, but I was just really heartened by what went on and what has continued to go on. And as a Black person in San Jose, we are a teeny tiny minority, probably about 3% of the total population. But to see the city kind of embrace this mantra, which would have been insane even 2 or 3 years ago. To see it be so central to what people, what they're expressing, was really heartening. Now, I will say this. There is a little bit of queasiness or tension that I feel around, that was a moment. Right. Yeah. That was a moment. And, my life is not is in relative to that is not a moment. Like
Right.
I will be black today, tomorrow, hopefully for years to come, and so will my children. And
Yeah.
so we're going to continue to be black when that's not popular.
Yeah.
For people to paint on buildings and such. And so while I was excited in that moment, I do have this sense of like, okay, well, if you are someone who is not black and you are really committed to showing up for Black lives, I just hope folks understand that a t-shirt's nice, murals are nice, stickers are nice, but that to undo the legacy of racism and the destruction of Black lives that continues to this day, it's going to take a lot more. And I hope as a Black person in America, you're just in it for the long haul. And that's what I kind of encourage whenever I'm talking to people about this is like, because people get really stressed out. They're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. So many horrible things are happening. And I'm like, and they've been happening.
Right.
And unfortunately, they're probably going to continue into our foreseeable future. So we need people to kind of take a breath and figure out how you can show up consistently.
Yeah.
A one-off protest is great. Showing up 40 nights in a row is great. But it's like, what are you going to do consistently to change the material conditions for Black people just in your own town? And when you do that, you are also going to be changing the conditions for everyone. When we look at the most oppressed among us, Black people, trans people, people with disabilities, when you make a society in which those folks can thrive, you're doing yourself a solid.
Yeah,
and I just hope people can see that continuum and that this isn't like a fad thing and we'll be on to something else,
I know,
but who knows?
It was kind of crazy because, I was like raised. I mean, I'm older, and so when I remember being born in the beginning of in the midst of civil rights, and that Martin Luther King being such an influence in my life, and I was surprised how I was so depressed because I was like, oh my gosh, I remember Rodney King, a lot of different things happening, and then I was just so, and still even now it's like, oh my gosh, like. Fanfare, T-shirts, but where, what's going to be the long-term change? What's the social, economic, change that's really going to take place?
We have to be careful. We have to be careful that we're not trading symbols of change for actual change. So I was, I don't want to be too controversial, but I thought the pivot towards, well, let's make Juneteenth a holiday. I'm like, I don't know if I need another holiday. I need a police officers union that is less powerful and more accountable to the people. Like I need to feel like my son who's 17 can go about this city without fear of being harassed or even harmed at the hands of the police. Those to me are the tangible changes we need. And shout out to Silicon Valley Debug for,
work.
Continuing to lead on this issue.
Yeah.
That's what we need. I think all the symbolic stuff, we have to be careful from conflating the feel good with the do good.
Yeah.
And
the road and the hill is difficult because, I run in a lot of, different circles, and some of the people I talk to, the white folks aren't, they don't understand. I heard a good friend of mine, who's a great guy, say like, excuse me. He's like, well, what other cases do you know of, Black people being pulled over than those anecdotal ones that we hear? I'm like, I was like, wait a second. Like, because he doesn't even really have people of color even in his realm. Like, I'm probably the most colorful being half Mexican,
Right.
So, and that is like the hard change. How do you, when you don't even see it, you don't even know about it, you're not even affected about it.
Which is true for most white people.
Right.
Most white people in America do not have Black friends, do not have people of color that they have meaningful relationships with. And also sometimes even when they do have friends of color, they don't understand how those friends of color are editing themselves.
Right.
And like, those aren't real friendships in the way you might think. I always come back to this. if you want to know, there's a lot out there for you to know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Smarter people than me, read some Baldwin, read
Yeah.
Ta-Nehisi Coates. Like,
Yeah.
it's people
Yeah.
who are eloquent and
Yeah.
brilliant. All the research is there. It's not a lack of empirical evidence. It's not about that. It's just, are folks willing to engage with their own discomfort,
Yeah.
engage with their own, sense of guilt, confront their own sense of privilege, which is not fun stuff. But
Yeah.
for me, I've definitely taken a step back from um, trying to prove to somebody that this is a thing.
Right.
I
Totally.
can't, I don't
Yeah.
engage with that energy anymore. If you want to know, there's so much out there for you to know. And if you
Yeah.
don't want to know, I would just, I've told a couple people, like, hey, if you don't care, just don't pretend to care. Like, don't ask these questions and kind of do the devil's advocate thing, if in essence you're just looking for an excuse not to care.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
Trying
so that's
to,
difficult.
yeah, almost like trying to find evidence to take your own stance or to bolster your own opinion. Yeah, I guess. Hey,
Yeah, yeah.
what what for you, like, then what is your like personal driving mission? You know what I mean? When you think of
Mm,
like, this is what I'm about, this is what I do, and
mm.
what's kind of like your,
Um, I think for me, it's about organizing people on the edges,
okay.
folks on the fringes. That's what my work in the arts was always about. When I think about even before I was kind of in the arts proper, throwing breakdance competitions and
Yeah.
throwing rap shows and battles, and it was just for folks who didn't have other outlets, who were not recognized by mainstream entities, and didn't have a way to come together and practice their craft or just be themselves.
Yeah.
And so I find that the theme that goes through kind of out all of my work is just cultivating these spaces for people on the fringes to kind of come together and express themselves and be themselves, and for me to express myself and be myself. I
Yeah.
think at the end of the day, I want to live in a free and open society where everyone can be their true, authentic self. And when I see barriers to that, I'm kind of always thinking about, what can I do to subvert that or break that down, or
Yeah.
create a little safe haven to the side. I think
Cool.
that's what ultimately my work has been about, and kind of what drives me.
Yeah, that's cool. How do you think that came about? I mean, were you always someone who kind of, even as like a kid, you kind of like took the people under your arm or fought, or spoke up or?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of corny to be like, oh, I was born a leader. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah,
But there was always, I was always comfortable in front.
yeah.
You know what I mean? I was
Sure.
always comfortable in front. I always felt like if I was in a group of 30 people, I always felt like I have something meaningful to say about what we all should be doing. And
Right.
whether that was always true or not is
You.
besides the point. I thought I did.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know what I mean? And it was always that case. In school, I wasn't a great student. But I was kind of always thinking on, I guess, what would be like a meta level,
yeah,
like not
yeah,
just what would be great for me, but like, what should we be doing?
yeah,
And that's
yeah,
kind of been my kind of leadership mantra since I was young. It's just like, well, what should we be doing, and why aren't we doing it yet?
yeah, yeah. That's cool. Um, that's great. Do you feel like, have you felt like growing up that you've had to, what do they call it? I forget what the term is. Like, downplay your blackness in situations. What do you like?
Oh, for
Edit it?
sure.
Really?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
In San Jose, especially. Oh, for
Oh
sure.
yeah.
Um, I feel inspired by this younger generation of Black folks. Like I say, I'm in my mid 40s now.
Hmm.
Through my work in the arts and other leadership spaces, coming across kind of millennial Gen Z Black folks who are just incredibly unapologetic.
Yeah.
And I feel like I did spend a portion of my life as I was raised to. There
Yeah.
was, I came of age. My parents are of the civil rights generation.
Yeah.
They came to California from the South for a new life, and they
Yeah.
got jobs in tech. And and it was about getting along and not necessarily conforming or degrading yourself, but it was like, you
navigating.
you learn navigate, you code switched, you learn how to get along.
Yeah.
There wasn't an emphasis on challenging systems or the way that things were, and so that was kind of a tension. But what I kind of going back to my rap story and coming of age as a rapper, the rap that I grew up with did challenge. Public Enemy and KRS-One and Paris and all these people were challenging these systems and calling out the police and all of these things. I've been kind of informing my worldview since I was about 11. Yeah. And so it was kind of this dual consciousness. I learned how to get along, how to get jobs, how to do all those things. But what I feel like has brought things full circle is my work in the arts, bringing about equity and bringing those experiences into the room and saying, hey, do you know how many times we had the meeting and then the people of color had to go outside in the hallway and talk about what the white people said in the meeting? you just couldn't say it in the meeting. Like, we didn't have the language. We were like, oh my God, this is so shitty, but we don't know how to speak up in that moment. And so, like I say, I draw inspiration from younger generations of Black folk who are just really laying it out there and living their lives unapologetically. And I think it's definitely inspired me to be more vocal and try to be more direct about how I challenge these things.
Yeah, cool. Right on. All right, man. Hey, well, what I want to do is can we play one of your songs, pieces?
Oh, sure.
As the intro and the extra.
Okay.
So what would you pick for that? And could you kind of like tell us about that? The song.
Yeah.
That
So the song that I'm gonna that I will select is called Lighters.
Okay.
And it's a song produced by my guy Jerry the Hermit, features the rapper Bambu on it. And the reason that I picked this song is because it definitely relates to kind of what we've been talking about for the past 15 minutes. Yeah. And this idea of what does it take to bring about change and transformation. It's in a lot of ways a protest song, and something that I'm really proud of. And I think is a good, whenever somebody asks me like, hey, point me to a song, this is typically what I give them. Yeah,
cool. And when did you write this? When was this done?
Woo, let's see. Maybe yeah, man. Maybe
before facial hair.
Yeah. Oh, I had facial hair as a 3-year-old. But,
oh, okay.
Before maybe 2014. Okay.
That's not that bad. I mean, I still think it's 2014. So.
Yeah, same, man.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah, cool.
But yeah.
All right. Well, cool, man. So then now plug the podcast. Where can they get that? What's
Yeah, so Dad Bod Rap Pod, new episodes every Thursday. You can access it on all the platforms where you get your podcast content, whether that be Google Play, Spotify, Apple Music, SoundCloud. Check us out on Twitter. There's a robust debate conversation that happens on our Twitter feed at Dad Bod Rap Pod. You can also follow us on Instagram at Dad Bod Rap Pod. We do an Instagram live chat every Friday at 5 p.m. Cool. Come check us out.
That's awesome, man. You guys are putting in the time on that. That's a lot of work.
A lot of hours.
That's cool though. But you're enjoying it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And Dave and Nate are such great guys too. So.
Oh, totally. Shout out to Dave and Nate.
Yeah. Cool. All right, man. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And hopefully next time you see me, just knock me off my bike.
Well, I'll throw some produce at you.
Yeah.
Say,
okay.
Hey,
cool. Thanks, man. You can check out Demone's music on Spotify under DEM ONE. And listen to their podcast, Dad Bod Rap Pod, wherever podcasts are found.
A 12-point plan executed with precisions, not waiting for a savior nor asking for permission, cause power concedes nothing till you up and confront them. The system is up and running while we down for maintenance, but we children of
Thank you for listening to the Content Magazine podcast. Follow us on social media at Content Mag. Visit our website to become a member and help us to continue to tell the stories of the local creators.
If you only want the whole truth, stop believing If you only want the whole truth, not believing what they told you. Your lighters up now.